get used to it. Sometimes you just gotta pick a side. And speaking of picking sides, Black Panther himself, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chadwick Boseman. Get used to all that applause, by the way. What do you think? You wanna drift one way or the other?
Well, as much as I respect you both, Black Panther is kind of his own guy. In all seriousness, I'm blessed to be a part of this Marvel universe and to work with you both. And I look forward to making magic together.
What is up, everyone? I'm CBM Productions, and welcome back to another installment of the Marvel Film Retrospective. Today we'll be discussing the final film of Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as the 30th film within this universe, focusing on the nation of Wakanda as it hits a low in its history, with the whole world above and below the surface trying to invade Wakanda for its resources at a time of mourning as they lose their king, as the remaining heroes had to pick up the pieces and find a way forward in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Black Panther 2 started development as any regular MCU sequel that was following such a critical and financial hit that was the first Black Panther film, essentially becoming a cultural milestone within the 21st century to so many people. Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige wanted to bring everyone back from the original Black Panther to try and recapture the lightning in the ball of magic that created that first film to so many people. Ryan Coogler, as well as the vast majority of the cast, was expected to reprise their roles and deliver an appropriate second chapter to the story of King T'Challa and Wakanda, mostly focusing on T'Challa's struggle to adapt to the world after being gone for 5 years during the blip. Development of the film was pretty smooth following the release of the first film. Everyone's deals were signed, Coogler was working on the script throughout 2019 and early 2020, even to the point where he got on stage with Kevin Feige at D23 in late 2019 to announce the film on its release date of May 6, 2022 at the time, being one of the cornerstones for the upcoming Phase 4 at the time. With so many projects on the horizon, and Chadwick Boseman, the star of the franchise, was meant to be one of the key players in the MCU going forward, and had planned to appear in more projects outside the Black Panther films, including doing some voiceover work for the What If animated series. Even when going into lockdown, everything on the film was smooth sailing for the most part in pre-production, and was expected to start filming around early 2021 as the script was nearing completion. But then, on August 28, 2020, we lost our King T'Challa, as Chadwick Boseman sadly would pass away from stage 4 colon cancer, a battle that he fought in private and kept a secret to the rest of the world apart from close friends and family. Despite people were noticing his rapid weight loss throughout the past year up until his death on social media and various interviews, most people thought it was just due to him being off the Marvel Extreme diet, and it was expected that he would gain back the weight to film the Black Panther sequel the following year. And nobody, not even Ryan Coogler, any of his castmates, or Marvel Studios, had any idea about his diagnosis, and the world was shook when people found out that he was no longer with us. Immediately following Boseman's passing, many people online debated on what Marvel should do with Black Panther 2. Some said that they should just recast T'Challa and continue his story without a beat. One of the biggest advocates for this was Boseman's own brother, stating that his brother wouldn't be so egotistical that the character should die with him. Some said they should outright cancel the film, but considering Black Panther is part of a bigger franchise, and not its own standalone franchise, it's kinda hard to just ignore Wakanda from here on out in the MCU. What Marvel and Coogler decided to go forward with is not recast T'Challa, and rather shift the film's focus to the supporting characters from the first film, and prop them up to essentially co-leads, all dealing with T'Challa's death in different ways, and use the film to express the grief and mourning of Boseman's death. the script is heavily altered from its original intention, causing production to be delayed by a few months, and Marvel pushing the film's release date back a couple months to July 2022 in the process. The film finally started shooting around June 2021 at Cholo Studios in Atlanta, and will wrap up filming around March 2022. During the filming process though, the production was stopped multiple times due to COVID outbreaks on set, causing cast and crew to be isolated for 2 weeks before being allowed to resume filming, on top of issues on set going on, especially regarding Letitia Wright, as she would receive multiple sustained injuries on set while filming scenes in Boston and returned to her home in London to recover, but had trouble getting back to the US to complete her scenes as the CDC implemented rules that you had to be vaccinated to enter the US, and Wright was allegedly anti-vax, causing big drama amongst people online as well. But she would be able to come back to Atlanta to finish her scenes eventually. Post-production would soon enter, as the film would remain quiet for a few months, minus a release date switched to November 11, 2022 in the States due to the IATSE strike the previous year, along with the title change officially being titled Wakanda Forever as a subtitle. The film will get its first big marketing push at San Diego Comic-Con 2022, as the majority of the cast appeared along with Ryan Coogler to announce some new faces to the cast, such as Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, that was announced to have her own Disney Plus series back in 2020, and is scheduled to come out next year, and she would make her debut as a character with this film. The bigger announcement though, was the confirmation of the villain of the film being named as the Submariner, played by Tena Huerta, being the biggest role in the actress' career up until that point, along with being one of the first confirmed mutants to be introduced in the MCU, as Marvel is slowly starting to integrate them into the MCU. The cast talked about the film during the panel and then revealed this first trailer to the crowd there, and would be released online soon afterwards, giving us an idea what to expect from the film's story and tone they're going for, being the most mature film in the MCU up until this point. Following the release of the first trailer, the film's marketing kept going at a good pace, eventually getting up to its release date, where a second trailer was dropped, various interviews from the cast expressing their dedication to this film as a tribute to Chadwick, who all of them considered a close friend, especially Coogler, who shined a lot more light on how Boseman's passing affected his treatment of the film and changed so much of the DNA, while also keeping a lot of the elements that were already present in the story. Now, as the time of recording this, the film's expected to have one of, if not the biggest opening weekend of the entire domestic box office this year so far, and one of the biggest opening weekends for an MCU film in general, being the first of 2 consecutive films from Disney consisting of blue people that's mostly set underwater or around water, and it's meant to end Phase 4 with a bang, especially from all the positive feedback it's been getting from fans and critics alike out of early screenings. Not to mention the future of Black Panther and Wakanda being brighter than ever, with Coogler in talks to write and direct a 3rd Black Panther film, as well as develop multiple series around Wakanda for Disney Plus with his production company Proximity Media, along with some reports claiming that he might even helm Avengers Secret Wars to end up this multiverse saga, which I don't even know how much water it holds, but I just wanted to put it out there. But regardless, does Wakanda Forever do a good job of being able to build a story without the central lead character from the first film in a way that feels as organic as possible, while also paying tribute to Chadwick Boseman and being able to celebrate his life and also introduce all these new characters and arcs in a way that feels cohesive? Well, let's find out. But before that, let's get into the plots. We started the film presumably soon after T'Challa and Shuri are brought back to existence from the blip in Avengers Endgame. Within a couple months though, T'Challa off-screen contracts a mysterious illness that Shuri and Ramonda believe could be cured by the heart-shaped herb, the plant that gives the powers of the Black Panther to whoever is selected as the moniker. But since Killmonger burned all the heart-shaped herbs in the first Black Panther film, Shuri tries her best to synthetically recreate the plant in a little time she has before T'Challa passes away, and Ramonda announces to her that her brother and the king is dead. Wakanda has a great funeral for T'Challa, as Ramonda and especially Shuri have a hard time keeping it together during the funeral, as they have to say goodbye to another member of their family. We cut to 1 year later as Shuri is still mourning the loss of her brother, and has delved herself into her technology as a way to block herself from the memories of her brother, including not working on finishing her synthetic heart-shaped herb, which in tandem causes there to be nobody to be able to take up the role of the Black Panther as the protector of Wakanda, which needs protection more than ever, as nations across the world are trying to pry their way into Wakanda to get the piece of their vibranium for their own reasons, as Queen Ramonda now has to fend off whatever foreigners attempt to take them on their own land. Most recently, a specific scientist has developed a DC vibranium detecting machine that can spot traces of vibranium outside Wakanda. The CIA and the Navy were on a joint mission to retrieve some of this vibranium, but everyone on the deep sea rig is ambushed by a mysterious race of beings that dwell underneath the surface, and either kill people straight up, or use their sound hypnosis to mind control people to jump off the rig, like they're in The Happening. Word of the attack spreads out, and many sources claim that Wakanda was behind this ambush, and they had a hard time clearing their own name. Soon afterwards, Ramonda takes Shuri out on a little mother-daughter retreat to discuss T'Challa on the 1 year anniversary of his death, including Ramonda burning her funeral clothes as a way of moving forward. Shuri does not want to participate and is extremely pragmatic on the ritual and at the concept of an afterlife. The discussion, however, is interrupted by the leader of the people that ambushed the deep sea rig, who managed to sneak into Wakanda the feather serpent god himself, Kukulkan, or some also call him Namor the Submariner, played by Teno Huerta. He arrives uninvited to threaten the two, to find and give him the scientist responsible for creating his vibranium detecting machine, or he and his people will attack Wakanda without remorse. He blames Wakanda for this most recent wave of people trying to seek out vibranium ever since T'Challa opened up Wakanda's secrets to the world at the end of the first Black Panther, and opened many outreach centers as a result. Shuri and Okoye go to the US to find their old CIA friend Everett Ross, to squeeze any information they can get out of him regarding the identity of the scientist, and managed to track the scientist down in Boston, revealed to be an MIT student named Riri Williams, played by Dominique Thorne. She's a young prodigy that, since she was little, has made machines out of anything she can get her hands on, from car parts for her stepdad's mechanic shop, and even some Stark tech, allowing her to create her own prototype Iron Man suits. But the meeting quickly gets cut short when the CIA ambush Riri's warehouse, and are then chased by the Fuzz. But they aren't the only ones chasing them, as Namor's goons are hot on their trail, taking down the police forces with ease, and manage to defeat Okoye as Namor's goons take Shuri and Riri down to their domain. Okoye returns to Wakanda without Shuri or Riri, and is stripped from the Dora Milaje as a result by Ramonda. She then turns to an old ally that hasn't been in Wakanda for 6 years, Nakia, who has been in Haiti ever since Thanos snapped away T'Challa in Infinity War, and didn't want to be at the funeral after he came back and passed away, as it was just too hard for her to handle at the time. Ramonda seeks Nakia's expert espionage skills to retrieve Shuri and Riri for her, as she reluctantly agrees. Meanwhile, Shuri and Riri wake up in Namor's kingdom, Talokan. As Namor gives Shuri a tour of his kingdom that he's protected for centuries, explaining that he's centuries old due to a mysterious plane that was found by one of the people in his mother's group back in the 14th century after finding it in a trench between some rocks underneath an Aztec temple, and stripping the juices into a bowl that all of her people in her mother's group drank, apart from her, fearing that it would cause harm to her baby. She then drank the juice out of peer pressure as an attempt to get rid of their smallpox, but all of them eventually died from poisoning. But then they were immediately resurrected with blue skin, losing their ability to breathe above the surface, but all of them grew gills so they can breathe completely fine underwater and adapt to deep sea life. Namor's mother eventually gave birth to him, as due to a mutation in his genes, along with being the first of this new race to be born from birth, to have all these abilities, was able to have all the abilities of a human and a submariner, along with being able to fly with wings on his ankles. Eventually, after his mother died of old age, Namor and his people went above the surface to bury his mom in the ground, as she requested. But after Namor saw all these awful things humans were doing, such as slavery, became bitter at the surface world and has no remorse for it, leaving him and his people to stay isolated and unknown to the world for centuries after that. Namor and Shuri come to an understanding as the two have a nice rapport, and Namor even gives Shuri a piece of jewelry that belonged to his mom as a gift. But he still insists on killing Riri for the safety of his people. Shuri doesn't agree with that, and still wants the both of them to come to a peaceful solution. As Shuri and Riri are sitting in their cell, Nakia scouts out where they are, and sneaks in to kill the guards and take the both of them back to Wakanda. But Shuri knows what this means and isn't happy about it. Ramonda is happy to have her daughter home, as Wakanda is then ambushed by Talokan, as the whole city is flooded by Namor, like he's the Riddler in the Batman, as Ramonda dies from drowning to save Riri. Namor says this is only a taste of his wrath, and wants Wakanda to team up with them to take on the outside world, something he talked about with Shuri earlier, but says if they don't, he'll come back in a week with full force. Shuri is devastated that not her entire direct family is with the ancestors now, and decides with the help of Riri and the inspiration of Nakia to complete her heart-shaped herb project, and actually manages to recreate the formula down to a T with the help of Namor's mom's necklace that she was given, along with constructing devices with Riri to expose Namor's weaknesses of dehydration, along with making new suits for Okoye after restoring her title as the leader of Dora Milaje, and an upgrade to Riri's Ironheart suits. She then performs the ritual of gaining the powers of the Black Panther and seeing the afterlife before being bestowed these powers. With the help of Nakia, she enters the afterlife, and instructs her to flood a Wakanda fortress by Namor, as she's greeted by her estranged cousin Eric Stevens, aka Killmonger, being the person that she needs to talk to in the afterlife, given her vengeful mood at the moment, who scolds her for being a hypocrite, and that she's doing what he was planning to do all along in the first film, saying that he was trying to get ahead of the game, along with scolding her entire family in the process. Shuri insists that she isn't going to go the same route as her brother did, and is going to take action first. Shuri then drops in on M'Baku and the Jabari tribe, holding sanctuary for all the Wakandans following Namor's attack on the city, as Shuri arrives in the new Black Panther suits, taking on the mantle following her brother. M'Baku and Shuri discuss how they should handle things. Shuri insists on killing Namor to stop Talokan, but M'Baku says that Namor isn't just their king, but their god, and that killing him will risk internal war between the two nations, and that nothing good comes out from vengeance. Shuri is not sympathetic to his request, and demands that he and his tribe help stop Namor at all costs. The following day, Shuri and Nakia discuss before heading into battle, with her reiterating a lot of the things that M'Baku was talking about earlier, but Shuri ignores it yet again, blinded by vengeance. Shuri leaves Wakanda on a giant seafaring vessel to draw in Talokan and Namor as the two nations go head-to-head in an all-out war, with everybody giving it their all. Shuri tries to trick Namor into heading into one of her ships, filled with heat waves to attempt to dry him out and weaken him, but Namor manages to crash the ship onto a shoreline as him and Shuri duke it out blow for blow, as the two are badly injured in the process, with Namor's wings being cut in the process like he's a fallen angel, and Shuri is badly pierced by a raw vibranium spear in the stomach. She eventually manages to separate herself from the spear and trap Namor as he's struggling to get to the shore for water. She pins him down with a spear to his neck, but her inner consciousness reminds her that this is not how she was raised, and that this is not the right thing to do. She eventually bargains with Namor that she'll let him live and will keep his kingdom a secret to the world if he backs off and never comes to Wakanda again. He agrees as the two return to the battlefield together, signifying a truce in the end of the battle. Wakanda and Talokan go their separate ways, as Shuri sends Riri back to her country in good graces, and Namor knows that Wakanda is isolated and eventually will need their help down the road, because they have no allies other than Talokan. Not to mention that Okoye goes to the US to break Everett Ross out of his incarceration after being arrested for keeping Wakanda's secrets from the CIA and his ex-wife Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. The film ends with Shuri visiting Nakia and Heidi, as she brought her funeral clothes with her to burn them like her mother's ritual earlier in the film, as she finally lets herself reel in the feelings of T'Challa and losing him, allowing her to grieve and attempt to start moving forward, as credits roll to a mid-credit scene that continues the ending scene we were left off with, as Nakia lets Shuri meet her secret nephew, Toussaint, who was conceived before T'Challa was snapped away in the Infinity War, presumably, as Nakia tells Shuri that she moved away from Wakanda to raise Toussaint in secret, away from Wakanda so he wouldn't grow up having the pressure of taking over the throne one day. And also tells Shuri that Ramonda did know of this kid's existence before she passed, as Toussaint tells her that Toussaint is only his Haitian name, and that his Wakanda name is T'Challa, as credits roll and the film ends. First off, I just gotta say hats off for everyone involved in the production of this film that managed to pull this movie off. For being one of the worst possible scenarios of a film production like this, with the lead actor of the franchise suddenly not being with us anymore, and completely having to rewrite the film to incorporate the real-life passing of Chadwick Boseman, on top of all the emotional baggage of having to shoot a film without their friend to so many of the cast and crew, and with all the strict deadlines from Disney and the COVID isolations, the fact this film turned out as good as it did is truly surprising, and I can't help but respect everyone involved in the making of this film, regardless of what I might say in the positive or negative columns of this video. Getting into my feelings of the film itself, despite not having the lead character from the first film, and having a tricky set with having to continue the world with Wakanda without T'Challa, Ryan Coogler managed to tell an ensemble piece that was all about grieving and fear of change, in a way that felt organic, fresh, and to me, exceeded the first film in damn near every single way. Starting with the acting, everybody in this film, no matter how big or small the role is, gives it their all in their performances. The vast majority of the cast in here, you can feel the pain in their eyes of having to continue the story of Black Panther without Chadwick Boseman, and it not only adds to the emotional ties and themes of the story we're presented in, but also adds a layer onto their performance that feels genuine because they lost not only the star of the franchise, but their friend and colleague at the end of the day. The standouts being Letitia Wright and Angela Bassett, who, because they are the closest tied to T'Challa, had the most emotional baggage both in the film and real life presumably, along with Ryan Coogler, and these two steal every single scene they're in. They suck the air out of the room when they're giving these gravitas speeches, and it's to a point where it does blur the line between acting as a character and the actresses themselves just getting out their grievances of Boseman's passing. Letitia Wright especially, for how she was just promoted all of a sudden to the lead of the film by default, and presumably will lead the franchise for the foreseeable future, and that pressure of having to be the next in line for Black Panther, and still not being able to move forward with her emotional turmoil, gives this character so many more shades throughout the runtime, to where you understand where she comes from, where she doesn't want to believe in the afterlife, when she's just joking with Okoye, and Riri, when she's just trying to kill Namor at all costs, and when she's finally given solace at the end of the film. It all makes sense to the character, and Letitia Wright genuinely carried the movie on her shoulders, and gave Shuri so much more emotional depth than just being the smart sister that we saw her in the previous appearances. The remainder of the supporting cast also does wonders here, and expands on the characters from the previous appearances. Denai Guerrero gives so much emotion to Okoye that you can also feel the pain in her eyes as her nation is weakened and vulnerable at the time of mourning. While also having to keep on a straight face and fight without a second to breathe, it's still amazing to see. Lupita Nyong'o is once again great as Nakia, and it was really nice to see her back from the first film after she was absent in both Infinity War and Endgame, and we finally got an explanation why she was absent in that mid-credits scene. She's still really badass, but also very sympathetic and caring towards Shuri, also still reeling over her lover's passing. Winston Duke is also awesome as M'Baku once again. He doesn't get a whole lot to do in here, but when he gets his time to shine, especially whenever he talks to Shuri during Ramonda's funeral, and when they're about to strike Namor, he's very good at just being emotional as well, and giving another layer to M'Baku other than just being the funny big guy who can kick ass. Dominique Thorne's pretty solid as Riri Williams acting wise as well. I'll get more into the writing of her character later, but what she brings to the character on screen was fun enough for the film. I do hope she gets more to do in her own series next year. And Martin Freeman was fun seeing him again as Everett Ross, and it was interesting finding out his ex is Val, which is kinda nice how they're trying to tie her character in as a through line in Phase 4. But last and certainly not least, Tenoch Huerta as Namor was awesome. As a villain, he felt like a major threat whenever he wanted to be, but he can also be more sympathetic whenever he and Shuri are just exploring Talokan and just talking about their different viewpoints. This character isn't just out to take over the world, he wants to protect those around him, just not in the most diplomatic way. Which makes him interesting in a sense where you don't know what side he's going to be on in every single scene he's a part of. He could put on the charming dialogue and mannerisms, or he could just flood Wakanda without a second thought. For an actor which has mainly done Spanish-speaking work throughout his career, I haven't seen him in anything before, apart from The Forever Purge technically, but that film's so forgettable that I didn't really recall any actor from that film. So similar to Gael Garcia Bernal in Werewolf by Night, this is my major introduction to him, and he did a great first impression, and I hope he gets more roles like Namor going forward. Moving on from that, I must praise the storytelling. The film, for nearly a 3-hour runtime, is able to be mostly streamlined with the amount of characters and storylines that we're surrounded with, and very rarely do I feel the pacing drag or feel like certain scenes and characters weren't necessary. It's not perfect, of course, but for essentially turning this film to an ensemble piece, where it was originally just focused on T'Challa as our lead, it was surprising how well executed it was. I also appreciate, although it's not surprising, that this is by far the most mature film of the entire MCU so far, and most likely will ever be. Sure, there are emotional films like Infinity War, Endgame, No Way Home, and certainly a lot of tear-jerking moments within the MCU throughout the years, but this film really brings up some emotional themes and messages about the stages of grief, and having to move forward, and what is the healthiest way to do that. Things that I think can help and speak to a lot of people that have lost people too soon, and also very valuable to kids watching this movie, about people who will die and can die at any moment, and how you can build and move on from it, but not forget why they mattered in the first place. There's no way this film couldn't escape that, even if they did recast T'Challa, but as someone who was very against the decision walking into this film, and would rather had T'Challa's story continue, I'm glad to be proven wrong and realize life doesn't really work that way, and movies like these have the platform to speak on these issues in our mental health and society, and rather than just make another fun blockbuster, giving this movie some substance will make this movie a forever high point of the MCU and superhero films in general. Another aspect I gotta praise is directing from Ryan Coogler. Being the creative visionary in this film, he's really able to develop the world of Wakanda naturally and keep that consistent tone of the first film. He directs the actors beautifully, the action set pieces are very much improved from the first Black Panther in every single way, especially in the special effects department. He holds the thematic and visual elements of the film like an iron grip, and above all, makes the film his own, and not like yet another manufactured superhero film, which despite Phase 4's faults, the vast majority of these movies have had their own flavor with a unique director, and not have felt like a committee directed them. I do feel like this is the best directed film of the Phase 4 movies, and probably the best directed MCU film since Infinity War and Endgame combined. The special effects, as I mentioned earlier, are a lot more improved in the sequel, and aren't literally rushed last minute to meet a release date like the first Black Panther was. And everything feels tangible and realistic for the most part. And the fact that they made Namor's ankle wings not silly is still shocking to me. The score from Ludwig Göransson, returning from the first Black Panther film, is just as good, if not better than the original score of the first film. This stands for me being the trash for Namor and Talokan, especially when they are prepared to attack. The atmosphere that's built up in these instrumentals just gave me chills, and Göransson is quickly becoming one of my favorite composers of recent memories, especially after he scored Tenet a couple years ago. Other than that, this is probably my favorite score from him so far. Alongside that, the soundtrack is pretty solid as well. Sure, it's not as iconic as the first film, especially with no Kendrick present, but a lot of the tunes fit well for what the film's going for, especially Rihanna returning to the music industry with Lift Me Up, which accurately reflects the more somber tone the film's aiming towards. It's quite a good tune to end the film off of. And as a whole, despite the film is very heavy in nature, it still manages to suck you into this world once again, and gives you an entertaining story and characters that can be invested throughout the entire runtime, while also refreshingly giving me a more adult-oriented story that didn't rely on a punchline every other scene or a big cameo to get a random reaction from the audience. Sure, we do get a couple familiar faces in here like Michael B. Jordan, but they don't stop the plot like Multiverse of Madness did, and it's able to make that balance of being enjoyable, while also not forgetting to remember what the film stands for. And overall, really does give justice to Chadwick in the best way possible, and honor him and feel like he's still part of the story, even though he's not here with us anymore. And I cannot wait to see what these characters and the world of Wakanda again in the near future. While this film is certainly a new jewel in Marvel's crown, it doesn't mean it's flawless. For how much the team of this film pulled off the impossible, I still walked away having some gripes that could have been fixed given another draft of the script. First off, it did quite bother me that the film never really mentioned what happened to Wakanda after the events of Infinity War in the 5-year blip, and pointing out that T'Challa was gone after 5 years, only to be brought back and all of a sudden pass away very shortly afterwards. It would have been nice to give some lip service to who ran Wakanda, especially if it was Ramonda. Having a mom that loses her son twice could have been very interesting to explore along with the people of Wakanda, and the fact that it was never really brought up kind of bothered me, because we've never seen what Wakanda was really like during the blip. Maya Okoye was somehow still the head of Dora Milaje in Endgame, but maybe we'll get the answer someday. Another thing that I wish was explored better was Namor's reasoning for hating the surface world so much. To me, the film didn't really give me a compelling enough reason as to why Namor was so infatuated with being the ruling nation of the world. And even his backstory isn't even that tragic. He literally just grew up underneath the surface, his mom died of natural causes, and some slave owners tried to shoot him while they were on land, and then they just burned their plantation to the ground. I just never got this burning sense of vengeance that compelled Namor to fight against the surface world other than wanting to keep this kingdom secret and not wanting to move his people. It's not like, for example, Zemo describing the death of his family due to the destruction of Sokovia in Civil War to T'Challa, to where you can feel the pain and anguish in Daniel Bruhl's voice that caused him to wanting to take down the Avengers. I just never got why Namor got so threatening and personal so quick for an issue that to me wasn't justifying going to these extremes like killing Riri. Speaking of, I feel like Riri Williams was a wasted character in the film. She was mainly just a means to an end, a plot device mainly just to move the plot forward, and almost acted as a MacGuffin in and of herself. I think Dominique Thorne did the best that she could with the role, but the writing of the character was essentially non-existent other than just being the American that all she does is react to the foreign scenarios of Wakanda and Talokan, just like Everett Ross in the first film. To me, I didn't learn anything new about the character that I didn't already know walking in, and it doesn't really get me any more excited for a series coming up next year. A few other side characters as well I feel add nothing to the movie. There's Namor's main two henchmen who are meant to be important, but are given very little dialogue, are essentially just high-ranking goons. There's also Everett Ross and Val. They're fine enough in their roles, but I honestly feel like the most mandated part of the script, that Coogler had to include them for the future of the MCU, and it kinda shows. And there's all these two Dora Milaje members that are lovers in the film, but none that really get any screen time to develop their characters individually or the relationship. And it just boils down to them having one scene at the end where the one kisses each other in the forehead and calls her my lover. I'm not upset at the inclusion in and of itself. I'm upset at the fact that this is obvious pandering for Disney to say that they're inclusive and put these two members on like Pride merch to sell at Disneyland, but not actually invest time into these characters and make them compelling. So you can just cut that ending scene out of them kissing in the form of releases to get more money. It's the exact same situation we saw with Fantastic Beasts earlier this year with Dumbledore, and countless films like it, in the Marvel Universe as well. And now it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, but if you're gonna include lovers, especially how much they were talked about in the press, have them be lovers, and develop them regardless of their sexuality. At least Eternals had some balls to go there. But I guess Marvel was just kind of scared away at the box office of Eternals and didn't want to go that route again. But they still want to be inclusive, and it just feels lazy to me. Lastly, and it is disappointing to say this, but I feel that the costume design, especially with the main superhero costumes represented here, was very poor in the film. From the Dora Milaje members' new blue Iron Man-like suits was really corny to look at. It looks like they stole the design from Porcupine from She-Hulk. Ironheart's suit in both versions look very weak. The Mark 1 is just very clunky and scattershot, but I'll give it some room because it is a Mark 1 suit. But the Mark 2 looks straight up like a plastic McDonald's toy flying around the screen. It's the one major special effect in the film that doesn't look real at all, because it looks like a Power Ranger suit and does not blend with Wakanda at all. And Shuri's Black Panther suit just looks overly designed. It's an issue that we've seen with so many Marvel costumes lately, where it seems like their costume designers just want to put like 500 different patterns on the suit that makes it look like they just threw whatever at the wall and hoped everything stuck. The suit just looks unfocused. I don't know what I'm looking at. I also had a similar issue with the T'Challa suit in the first Black Panther, where that simple design we got from Civil War became more abstract for no reason other than sell more toys and get more variants out there. And this suit just feels like they're trying to make something different for the sake of it, and just all the patterns look so messy, to the point where I don't even know where her eyes are half the time. And also a small nitpick to me, but it does kind of bother me that for somebody like Shuri, who we've known as a tech whiz ever since the first Black Panther, and whenever she was in battle, like in Infinity War and Endgame, she just used her blasters and not much else. The fact that she now has all these fighting styles down to a T, and can take Namor head on, after like a day of getting the Black Panther heart-shaped herb powers, just feels off to me. Yes, she has the raw strength and the Black Panther suit, but it doesn't just instantly make her a martial artist. And the fact that this battle is only meant to take place like a day or two after she takes the heart-shaped herb just doesn't make sense to me, unless I'm missing something. The film certainly has its faults, but the positives certainly outweigh them. Overall, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a triumph of a film, and a hell of a way to close out Phase 4, at least on the film side of things. Being able to naturally continue the story of Wakanda in a way that doesn't feel forced, or like it's just here to continue the franchise in a soulless way, is an accomplishment that few filmworkers today can really grasp onto the way that Ryan Coogler did. The emotions of this film run high, but not in a way that feels pandering or distraction from the plot. Being able to interweave the passing of Chadwick Boseman to make it to where he still feels integral to the story, despite it doesn't appear in one frame of the film that isn't footage from previous movies. The acting is phenomenal, especially when Letitia Wright. Just giving her entire body and soul to this performance is impressive. I truly do think she is Oscar material with her performance in this film. The writing is great, the pacing's smooth, the score and soundtrack add into the atmosphere the film builds, the action is exciting and a big step up from the first film. It's able to explore more mature things about grief that make the film have a purpose beyond just being another MCU film, all helmed by a creative visionary in the center of it, who could have easily just walked away from the film after Chadwick's death, like most filmmakers would have done given this scenario, but the fact that Ryan Coogler stuck through it and gave it a very cathartic film that expresses the grievances of his friend that he lost, along with the entire cast, makes this film one of the best experiences of the year so far, and a film that's well beyond your average superhero film. It might have faults in some areas, but this manages to outdo the first film in almost every way in my opinion, and it gives a reason to care about the story, despite T'Challa no longer being the focal point anymore. Which is something that I wasn't interested in a couple years back when this decision was made. But understanding the full picture now, I wouldn't change this film to include a recasting. Despite everyone acts like we knew Chadwick, most people didn't know him on the level that Ryan Coogler and his cast did, and that it would feel off if they had just switched him out for another actor, and rather use this film to tell the world it's okay to grieve and cry over your loved ones, and that they'll always be there if you remember them. This is a film that everyone that helped make it should be proud of themselves, and whenever we get to see Wakanda next, I'll be there day one. I give Black Panther Wakanda Forever an A-, a 9 out of 10, and a must-watch recommendation. So that's Black Panther Wakanda Forever. What do you guys think about it? Leave your thoughts down in the comments, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. I'm CB Productions, and this isn't the last Marvel film to review, because we're in the endgame now.